Hi, I'm Laurence Brahm, producer and director at Shambhala Studios, and I want to thank Buddhist Doors for giving us this opportunity every month to tell you a little bit more about the Lotus-Born master, Guru Padmasambhava, and the journey that our studio has been taking following his footsteps across the Himalayas through a series of documentary films and now feature science fiction films following his journey in the past and projecting what it might be like in the future. So now let me tell you a little bit about the story behind the scenes of the filming of Searching for the Lotus-Born Master and the series of documentary films that have followed. Now, first of all, who is Guru Padmasambhava? Guru Rinpoche, the Lotus-Born Master. Many of you may be asking, and I think historically we can just confirm he was really the founder of Tibetan Buddhism. He lived in the 8th century. He came from the ancient kingdom of Odiana, which according to both archaeologists and historical records that we have, is clearly in the Swat Valley of Pakistan, what's today Pakistan, and the Silk Road ran through here, and it was really a melting pot of all kinds of spiritual teachings of the time. Of course, it was a tantric Buddhist kingdom, but it was one that was having influences from Kashmiri Shivite culture, Taoist culture, Zoroastrian culture, shaman, all of those forces energies, compositive energies were all coming into Odiana. And it was a very liberal kingdom in that sense. It was embracing everything and on its own spiritual quest. And that was the world into which the Lotus-Born master was born. And according to a legend, he was born on a lotus on Lake Danashka, which can still be found in the Swat Valley area of Pakistan. And from there, he became the Lotus King, and then he renounced his kingship to go on to the charnel grounds in India. There were 8 charnel grounds, which are really 8 entry points into the mandala, and he learned from 8 great yogi masters, different yogic techniques. And then he went on and he became, the sublime wisdom guru, where he was able to open all of his chakras with, the Dakini Leki Wangmo. And then he began this even more phantasmorical journey, going to different places across the Himalayas, subjugating demons, taming nagas, turning all of these forces, these asuras that could be actually, very threatening forces, into protective ones. And he was also going into nunneries, disrupting the protocols. He was burned at the stake. He was actually an amazing deconstructionist. He was taking apart a lot of the social norms and perceptions of the time and reconfiguring them into another state of mind that allows us to break out from everything that we have been confined with. Those social norms, protocols, all of those institutional frameworks, which are entirely illusions or projections of our own human fears, desires, and fantasies. And in turn, he cut through all of that. So if we look back and we say, who was the Lotus-Born master? What were the quintessential essence of his teachings? It was to cut through illusion. It was to understand the nature of our own mind and to be able to take all kinds of negative energies and circumstances and convert them over to positive once we have the full realization that there is no negative, there is no positive. Everything is what it is. And when we realize the power of our own mind, once we free it, then we can understand that how we perceive any single situation will determine that situation's outcome. I think this was really the essence of what he taught. And of course, he had many different types of tantric rituals that he was able to fuse from the many different traditions that he himself absorbed into his tradition that became what we know today as Tibetan Buddhism. Now, when we began our series of documentary films, we asked the single question: is it possible that the founder of Tibetan Buddhism might very well be the father of quantum physics? Well, of course, that question irked many people in the science community, and many people who are very, very traditionalist said, wow, this is, going into uncharted area, uncharted path. Where's it going to lead? And some of you may be really curious, like, why did we choose that as the subject of our documentary series? Well, it all began with a dream. That dream I talked about in our first movie, Searching for Lotus-Born Master, 8 Manifestations of Quantum Energy. But actually, it was a very, very important turning point in my own life, because I was traveling back and forth to Kathmandu as part of an environmental think tank NGO doing annual conferences called the Himalayan Consensus Summit, and we were all building these ideas around Himalayan wisdom traditions that could be applied to economics and to really finding ways to protect our environment through sustainable business projects. And then suddenly I was in a storm in the plane. The plane was hit by lightning, and make a long story short, wow, I saw all that light go around the plane, and it was really a moment of, where your life is right in front of you. And the plane then went to Dhaka in Bangladesh, spent the night there, and from that moment, Lotus-Born Master kept appearing in my dreams again and again, until one day he stood in front of me and said, my 8 manifestations are 8 quantum energy fields. Now, you go tell the world. And I woke up, I was like, okay, sure. Well, first of all, what are the 8 manifestations, and what is quantum physics? And, I had lived in Lhasa for about 5 or 6 years. I'd filmed extensively across the Himalayan plateau, and of course we all knew Guru Rinpoche, the Lotus-Born Master. Everybody knows this name, this figure, but actually people know very little about him. Even some of the great lamas really don't pay that much attention to the course of his life and what happened and what it really means. And so we started to ask, what are the 8 manifestations? We knew there were 8 manifestations, but exactly what they were required about a year of research. I think we have every single book that we could get our hands on about Guru Rinpoche. And then we began to try and map out what was the sequence of these manifestations. And we really came up with a sequence which may not fit all the traditional tankas and books and things, but it was really what we could piece together historically as his own journey from the kingdom of Odhyana at Swat, going down to Bihar, to Bodh Gaya, to the 8 charnel grounds, and then moving on to the kingdom of Zahor, which is today located in Himachal Pradesh in northern India, and then going back down to Nepal, on to Bhutan, to Tibet, and then coming back to Bhutan again, and just trying to follow the sequence of his own life story, in which we found that each manifestation was a turning point in his own journey to realization or full enlightenment. And in each of these different manifestations, he engages in a different type of training practice, tantric ritual, a different sort of stage of practice that further opens one's own body, mind, spirit to the sort of super conscious of the, what I call in unified quantum field, or you could call it the great Dharma Dhatu, to use the really traditional Tibetan Buddhist term. And each of these manifestations was a practice. And so we're looking at 8 personalities or 8 transformational moments in his life, 8 doors entering the mandala of our own mind, or the mandala of the universe, 8 practice methods, and each of these practice methods actually has a science to it all of its own. So we could say these are 8 quantum energy fields. In doing this production, we had to ask, what is quantum physics? And of course, we began not only interviewing the lamas, rinpoches, khenpos, those teachers, those great erudite teachers who could really connect us with the traditions, but also interviewing scholars who could give some historical perspective to what was happening at the time in these different places that we visited as we began to follow the footsteps of the Guru and really try to unravel his own story. And then we interviewed technology leaders, science doctors, people who really would be able to explain what is the science behind these teachings, what is the quantum physics, what are those possibilities of unlimited probability that arise when one is actually able to achieve the full state of Rigpa, or emptiness, and be one with the Dharma Dhatu. And so suddenly we were opening up an entire fabric of ideas that he had left behind and that had over time kind of become a bit, should we say, stale, because they were being kind of looked at in a very pedantic way and not really being applied in a practical practice way. And the language of the past, of course, we don't use that language anymore. Really, it's like I use Shakespearean English as an example. I mean, we love Shakespeare plays and movies and all that kind of panaz. But actually, if we sit down and we read Shakespeare, most of us are not going to understand it because that language is not the language we use today. And so by using kind of a more of a free, modern tech language that everybody can relate to, we were able to start to take the Guru's teachings and transmit them to a broader public that really needs these teachings now more than ever before, because he predicted this age of Kali, age of degeneration caused by our short-sighted greed, ignorance, and anger. And you look at what's happening out there, all you gotta do is turn the news on, see what's going on, and it's just the big samsara mess. And it's bringing our planet to, self-annihilation unless we can get control of the situation, shift the energies, and change the algorithm of karma. And that depends on each and every one of us being able to harness back the power of our own mind, not let the social media platforms, those big tech companies, they're called, the FANGs is a financial term. It stands for Facebook, Amazon, Netflix, and Google. So I mean, that's your mind is their mind. So when are we going to take our mind back? And that's the question that Guru Padmasambhava, the Lotus-Born master, left all of us to decide, because his teachings are about taking back the power of your own mind. It's being able to harness your own ability to perceive situations and to understand there is no positive or negative. There is no good or bad. Everything is what you want to make it, and the power to do that's here. It's not with your cell phone, and it's not with your social media, and it's not with the capital markets and politicians that are controlling all that. So really what he's teaching us is to bring back the power of our own mind. And if we want to have that revolution where the army of Shambhala overtakes the greed, anger, and ignorance and opens the doors of Shambhala so our planet can become a place of peace, love, compassion, where everyone's working together, helping each other, and really trying to protect the environment that in turn protects us. Maybe time for his teachings to go global again. And that's why we've been doing this series. I want to thank Buddhist Doors for giving us this platform every month of 15 minutes to talk about what we're doing at Shambhala Studio. and particularly the importance of being able to take this precious Himalayan wisdom and take it out of the Himalayas, out to the world, and give back to people the power of their own minds.